A few years ago, I did an aircrew survival training course with the Army where we learned everything you would need to know how to live in the woods for an extended period of time. The course covered everything from wild edibles to signaling overhead aircraft for help. The final test was one of the most challenging and terrifying experiences of my life. We were to hike 10 miles into the woods, find a clearing, and set up camp. Sounds easy, right? With nothing but a combat knife, field ration, and a very basic med kit. We were told by our instructor that due to an incident last year with somebody succumbing to the tolls of being alone in the woods, a combination of loneliness, boredom, and the thought that you aren't going to be rescued can drive even the most confident outdoorsman mad, that we were to remove our belts and leave them at base. We drove in a 3-ton up a logging road to our location. We were each given a specific grid location, each at least 5 miles away from another person. We were given instructions to hike to our location. Mine was almost an 8-mile hike through densely wooded marshland, and radio in when and if we reached our location. I had to change my location because my grid left me in a pond. I camped on the shore instead, for obvious reasons. I got my bearings, planned out what I was going to do for shelter, and settled in for my 5-night stay there, completely on my own. I decided that since the weather was good, and I wasn't planning on staying there for too long, that I'd opt for minimal shelter and focus more on food and water collection. Water wasn't hard to find. There was a stream just outside of my camp. I put all my effort that first day into setting traps to catch small game, pitfalls, rabbit snares, and deadfall traps. I thought, if I'm gonna set traps, I may as well set some to catch me a deer. I crafted a swing spike. Essentially, I bent a strong tree branch and attached several sharp spears to it, connected to a tripwire system. I was very proud of my work. It would have definitely taken down a medium-sized deer. Everything was pretty uneventful the first few nights. Aside from wolves howling in the distance, it was quiet. For the first time in my life, I heard nothing but the sound of the woods. It was surreal. On the third night, I heard the swing trap go off. It made a hell of a noise when it hit the tree beside it, which was discouraging because it meant it hadn't hit its target. I woke that morning late in the day. The sun was already high in the sky. First thing on my mind was to check my small game traps. I hadn't had anything to eat since the second night, and the only thing in my belly was water. I went to reset the swing trap and saw something strange. There was blood on one of the spears. The wound must have been deep. The blood covered the first 2 inches of the spear. I noticed something else strange near the trap. What looked like a man's bare footprint. I hadn't taken my boots off outside the shelter, and there's nobody around for miles. I became a little uneasy, knowing that someone was around, and wounded. What was weird was that there was no trail of blood to follow, especially with a wound of that size. The trap would have hit him square in the hip. I decided to return back to my camp, and snack on some nearby cucumber leaf, a local plant that grows in the Canadian Maritimes. It's a broad-leafed plant that tastes like cucumber. And of course, berries. I also ate berries. Suddenly, a wave of guilt washed over me. I may have killed an innocent wanderer or some weird hermit living out in these woods. But I was given very strict instructions not to go more than 200 feet outside my grid bubble. I decided to radio in the incident to command. They told me that somebody would look into it. 15 minutes later, I heard a chopper circle overhead for about 5 minutes, land about a mile away, and leave quickly. It must have been an air ambulance to pick up my victim or something. The fourth night was strangely quiet. No bugs humming, no wolves in the distance, no wind, nothing. It was the closest thing to silence that I had ever heard. Out of nowhere, every hair on my body stood on end, as if the air around me had been electrically charged. I felt like I was being watched, not just that uneasy feeling you get when you're alone in the woods. I knew I was being watched. A quick gust of wind blew over my shelter. The air was freezing cold. I could see my breath. The deer trap went off again. It didn't hit the tree this time. I was scared stiff. I was not going to leave my shelter to investigate. Suddenly, something broke the silence. A cough, unlike anything I've ever heard a person make before. It was almost mechanical. Almost like the voice of someone with the electronic voice box. Almost like the voice of someone with an electronic voice box. One cough every 2 seconds or so. It was very rhythmic. The coughing was the only sound. No background noises chimed in from the woods. I psyched myself up to pack up the courage to look through the entrance of my shelter to see what was making that noise. Just outside my shelter was a bare foot with tattered jeans around the ankle. I was petrified. I curled back into my shelter, and for the first time in my life, I accepted death. I accepted that if whoever was out there wanted to kill me, he could. I cried myself to sleep that night. For the next day and night, I stayed in my shelter, too afraid of whatever was out there to leave. I was woken up on the 6th day by my sergeant. It was past noon, and he was worried that I had been injured on my way back to the extraction point. On the hike back to base, I asked him about the chopper. He told me not to worry about it. I let it go for about 10 minutes before asking again. He noticed that I was genuinely concerned. It was a body recovery. Corporal J hung himself with a rope he made. "You are friends, right?" he asked. He asked me like he knew the answer was yes, and handed me a note. It read, "I tracked him to your site. I know I shouldn't have, but I did." He kept coughing and whispering in a language I had never heard before, but understood. He wanted a soul. He told me to do this to save you. The man with black eyes wanted you. Hey guys, I hope you've enjoyed this NoSleep video. Thank you all so much for the support, and if you haven't already, please like, comment, share, and subscribe, especially if you're new. Also, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to get updates. Also, if you guys want to check out a great channel on Twitch, live streaming games like Days, Battlefield, and more, I really recommend watching my new partner Handkerchief. So check out his channel by clicking on his logo in the screen now, or his link in the description, and be sure to follow him. Let me know what you guys want to see in the upcoming videos by commenting down below, and if you have any stories to submit, don't forget to send them to my email, wormystories@gmail.com. I'll see you guys in the next video, and don't forget to subscribe to join the wormhole. Thanks for watching, stay safe.